Yes.
All right. Please rise for silent invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilman Ford?
Here.
Councilman Tremont?
Here.
Councilman Bastian?
Here.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Here.
Mayor Burnett?
Here. We got all 5 of us. Economics 101, Team Volusia.
Hello, Council.
Welcome, gentlemen.
My name is Chris Wimsett. I'm with Team Volusia. I have Matt Chestnut here with Team Volusia as well. Dwight Durant is our chair. He's in the audience with us today. And we were asked to put together a short presentation on economic development as we see it from our perspective here locally and with Port Orange, and kind of what suggestions we might have moving forward given a number of factors that are taking place in the marketplace. Fair enough? I'll try to keep it brief. We have about 56, no, just kidding. We have about 30 slides, but I'll run through them quickly. Promise. So here's the agenda. We're going to go through 4 topics. A little bit about us, a little bit on the site selection process. That's our main function at Team Volusia. The local community data and goals. So this is kind of information on Port Orange as well as Volusia County, and then suggestions on moving forward. So a little bit about us. If you do or do not know, we're a 501c6. We are a membership organization, Economic Development Corporation. We were started in late 2010. We really didn't begin substantial operations until 2011. We have over 100 investors, public and private. And we have 12 cities, educational institutions, and the private sector involved. Something I want to note here is really the point of a P3. A P3 organization, public-private partnership, is leverage. What we do is leverage everyone's dollars, all the different investment groups' dollars, to produce an organization that has over $1 million budget and can do a lot more with that than it can individually on its own, if that makes sense. We are one of 70+ organizations around the state. Some counties have just public groups. Some counties have private groups. Many of them have public-private groups. This is just a small sampling of the different groups that are out there. We represent just Volusia County. We are a young organization, as I said before, started in 2010. As you can see, just like any other small business, the first couple years, you're really in kind of what I'll call the incubation stage, right? You're just growing your small business, learning your operating procedures, what you can do, what your clients want, what sources you have to produce results, etc. And then over time, you start to mature as an organization. I think that is safe to say that's what we are doing right now. We recently completed our first strategic plan last year, marketing plan, and a variety of other planning and directive documents to guide us into the future. So what do? We have a couple core functions. We are the big business recruitment arm for the county. We do business development activities. This involves outreach activities. This involves familiarization tours. This involves a variety of other events that we hold. We do marketing activities. So this is to improve the awareness of the county to the outside investment community. And then we support local community initiatives such as yourself. So projects. We've done a number of projects over the past 6 or 7 years. Last year's results were some of our best, I have to say. We had 1,300 new jobs, $46 million in capital investment, and $46 million in payroll, $55 million in capital investment. So we certainly don't do this in a vacuum. We work with many partners such as yourself, educational institutions, nonprofit groups, state groups, utility partners, Career Source, and a variety of other groups. You can see some of them there. There are many, many more. We work in partnership with the CEO Business Alliance and the county quite a bit. Please, by the way, ask questions if you have a thought along the way. So one thing I think we should really put on the table now is that economic development is really comprised of three major components. Those components are business recruitment, business retention, and small business development. So you either find business, you grow your own business, or you start business, right? That's how communities really enhance their business sector. We fall under the recruitment side, and it should be noted that historically, maybe 10 to 15% of all new job creation in a community is done through the business recruitment function. Of course, there's many variables, but that is a smaller portion. Business retention is generally considered the most widely used and leveraged activity and produces the highest number of jobs over time. And then small business development, of course, is something that all communities continually try to do. I'm going to turn it over to Matt here to cover the next section.
All right. Thank you all. What you see right there is really when a company is coming to look or comes to an economic development organization or even a city or anybody that works with economic development, they're really looking for help really in these four areas. We kind of break it down to as general as possible. They're either looking, a lot of times when we go out, we're talking to companies, they want to know what kind of market do you have in Central Florida, particularly if they're not here right now. What's my possibilities of creating business or creating profit and revenue in your area, and how's that work? So they're looking for new markets, and also small businesses are doing the same thing. As we grow as small businesses grow, they're obviously looking to capture more market as well. Another area they're going to come look at is resources, whether that be the natural resources in the area, or they're looking for workforce or capital or anything they can do in that area that can help them grow their business, make them profitable, which allows them to create jobs, create capital investment, and new wages. Or they're looking for new efficiencies. So if efficiencies, they're closer to their suppliers, their research and development. There's a cluster in the area that they can use to make their business easier, better, more streamlined. That may be why they move to a new area or grow in a specific area. Or they're looking for a specific strategic asset, technology. There may be a cluster of research and development. You see in different areas, you see the space, what they've done with space in the Space Coast area. That's a cluster they may be looking for. So those are type of things that when companies come to look at us, talk with us, or talk with you, that's the questions they're going to be asking. Usually something in these four areas. The next thing on here is when a site selector or a company comes to us, this are really the steps they're going to take to not even come to us before they do a business or work with a business. These are the steps they're going to take to find a site. One, they're going to talk about the corporate value, what the corporation's looking for, what the requirements are for that project, what will make it successful. The second is understand the decision, what the decision-making process is going to be on the site selection. What are the key factors in their site, what they're looking for, whether it be demographics or clusters or transportation, infrastructure. Three is they're going to look at potential locations. They're going to come in, they're going to narrow down the site. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, but that assessing the potential locations is a big key. Now, those first three decisions are usually going to be done before they ever talk to an economic development organization. So that's where it becomes important from a marketing standpoint or from a data standpoint to make sure you have current information out there, whether it be real estate, whether it be demographics that they're able to look at. A lot of these companies are using sources that we use, the same type of demographics and data research. So we all try to make sure we're on the same page and we're talking about the same numbers, because they do check and they do look at, how many graduates from a university you have in that area, how many people are living there, what your growth rate's been, and those type of things. 4, 5, and 6 is really the next step where the economic development people get involved, where they validate the outcomes. They're looking for the properties. They're trying to decide, is this property the right place to be based on the factors that were described in 1 and 2. And then 5, they're going to negotiate a deal, which is, either the sale of the property, or they're looking for any type of incentive that may be available, they would negotiate. And then 6 is to obviously get the best deal on that. Did you take that one? These are the factors that employers are looking at usually. Not a whole, more of a broad list of them, but these are usually a lot of the questions we get. I would say the important ones on here that we get are workforce, infrastructure, and timing. How quickly can we get a building? How quickly can we get up and running? That has been one of the biggest factors in the last, I will say, 5 years, where it used to be a 24-month window. It's now down to 12, 18 tops. So we are under the gun. If we don't have property ready to go that can be built on and have something up in 12 to 18 months or a building available, we're not in the lead on that project. We've got to having property available, having the infrastructure in place to have those properties built in a quick manner, and having the policies in place that allow for industrial property, particularly industrial property, to be built in a timely manner is important.
What's the word on the street? What's the street cred that we have as far as getting permitting done and applications through for the city of Port Orange? What's been your experience in dialoguing with these companies?
I speak for Chris. That's not. We don't deal a lot of times with the permitting process, particularly at all levels. A lot of times when we have a project, our projects are bigger and they usually more high profile, and they'll go through, and there's some stumbling blocks, but I think every city has that. Now, as for Port Orange specifically, I don't know. I can't really speak to it one way or another. I apologize for that.
That's
but
fine.
just I don't have a. We don't
Yeah,
have one way or another.
I wasn't sure if you had that information or not, but I wanted.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's judgmental. I'm sure it's subjective on a lot of people's
Of course
parts.
it is.
There's a lot of things in the development process that I come from a background. I'm a former public works director and a former city manager, so I understand that development process. And a lot of the times, the city may not be hanging it up. It's on the private side trying to get their stuff done and get through. So there's a lot of misconceptions sometimes about cities hanging stuff up or impeding stuff when it's really unfounded, not their fault. You know, as long as your process is as streamlined as it can be when it comes to building and property, and as long as, you know, there's some certain timelines you have to hit from a state law even on different things. So as long as you're not really exceeding those, or your permit review times aren't extreme, you know, you can only do so much so fast with your development too. So we haven't heard that really about any city for the most part, but from our part, our first thing is, well, who caused this hang up? What's the hang up, and where's it starting? So we try to work with that as well.
You're in a good place right now,
Good.
He would, yeah, definitely Dwight. This is a report from Area Development Magazine. They go out and survey CEOs of companies that may be looking to expand within the next 12 to 18 months. And they do this every year. This is a report from 2015 that shows kind of the top 20 ranked of what they look for when they're going to a community. We have the newer one. You can put the last 5 years up here. Those things may change one or two places, but the titles stay the same. So these top 20 things that you're looking at right here are important. As you see, labor, highway accessibility, quality of life, you know, occupancy or construction costs. You can go down through there and see available buildings is up there as well. Those are all questions we get asked on every project with every city and really every county, every city, every area that is looking to bring somebody in has to answer those questions. So our jobs and the city's jobs, county's job is to make sure we can address those questions for each and every project that comes in, and how are we doing that? Kind of that's a benchmark of what's our skilled labor? Who's working on that? Who's working on the skilled labor? Highway accessibility. You guys are sitting right on interstate, just south of I-4 also, so you got 2 interstates right there, pretty good highway accessibility. So you make that argument. And quality of life, great quality of life all throughout Volusia County. And then so on down. I can go through those, but those are really areas as you look and you develop your economic development strategies. These are really the questions you have to answer and be able to answer and be able to prove. Is that you? Okay.
So every project has a process, and every company's needs are a little bit different. But Generally, this is the process that they go through. We actually took this from an actual client on an actual project that was considering this community. We stole this particular slide from the site selection group to help us tell the story. So as you can see, first they go through the particular needs, and then they filter the communities right off the top. They don't talk to us, they don't talk to you, they do this all but data. And that is going to be one major takeaway that you'll see throughout any time you spend with us or a presentation is this is really a data-driven process. So they go through this filtering process and narrow down 800 plus MSAs down to, a handful of communities or states. Then they go through a particular analysis for that client that's a little bit more detailed. Then they go through calling us and start looking at properties. This is when they call you as well. We may talk to them throughout this process, but we don't know who it is. We don't get many details at all. This is when on our pipeline, you'll see them in stage 1 or 2 at the best, which means we talk to them, but we don't have a name. We just know they're interested, and they gave us a few details. And it gets whittled down very, very quickly. This is what it looks like if you had to put it into some sort of an illustration. This particular client started with over 900 MSA, so the country, and narrowed it down from there. Interestingly enough, you can see that real estate was at the very end, right? So they looked at all these other factors that, frankly, we don't control, which is interesting. These are just where you are in the world, where you are with regards to infrastructure, and labor is when we can really start to control how we appear to the private sector. Any questions on that? No. So another trend that I just wanted to throw up here on the screen are these 4. Again, data-driven. Everything is data-driven, and it's open source. So we all, like Matt said, we all use similar tools, our clients and ourselves. Some of the smaller companies, of course, don't use those tools and lean on us for those. But the larger clients most certainly do. I would encourage the city moving forward to use the tools that we have. Other communities use our tools, I would say, more than Port Orange does. And sometimes that just comes down to knowing what questions to ask. It gets complicated quickly. So let's keep that in the back of our minds. The world economy, this actually came to light this week last week, as I worked with 2 companies who traditionally did business only in their market area, and both of those clients not only do work around the state and around the country, they now plan on doing work around the world, and they are no different than the mom and pop shop down the street. So the point here is that nearly anyone can do business around the world, and they do. And they are all looking for broader markets. Again, talent drives development. More times than not, we will get calls from employers or site selectors, and their question is not, what real estate do you have available? Their question is, who do you have available? And can you prove it? And that is an interesting question to try to prove. And it's different with every client. But that is certainly driving many projects. And then lastly, urbanization. This one can affect you on how you do zoning and how you do development. If it is true that much of the workforce now likes to be in a denser community and not as much, not as appealing in the suburban communities as was tradition, then communities have to reshape how they define their quality of life and their walkability and their urban cores, right? That's just modern planning. You can tell many of the larger MSAs are taking advantage of this, but there's also an effect from the suburban community with regard to the larger MSAs. So let me walk you through a project. If we work with a technical center, which we do frequently, a back office center, if that sounds familiar. If we work with one of those and they want to put their headquarters in, let's say, an Orlando market. Orlando market downtown is a very expensive place to be. A suburb is much cheaper. Well, they don't likely want to put their whole office, their whole headquarters in a very expensive place to be. What they'll do is they'll parcel off. They'll put a handful of people in their headquarters in Orlando. And then much of their back office will go into the suburbs or counties like ours. So that is happening very frequently at this point. Questions? All right. And then the last section.
We're close to the last section.
Yes.
As we got into talking about it, Economic Development 101 as pertained to Port Orange, we got in, this is your strategic plan from 2017 and your economic development arm of that, which we thought was great. We looked at the objectives, and really what we started talking about was how do your objectives meet those questions we talked about earlier in what the companies are looking for. And really we thought you did a great job in those 7. You're talking, you know, property value, keeping your increase your property values, which allows you to improve your quality of life, your infrastructure, all your amenities that you need to offer, and can keep your property tax levels at a sustainable level while keeping services at the level that you need to keep them at to recruit companies and people. Brand and market Port Orange aggressively. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. You know, the pursue additional annexation. You're looking for areas for growth. That's great. You've got growth on the horizon. Where is it sustainable? Where can the Port Orange do growth? You go through all those, and really I could go through them all and talk about them individually, but that's really what set the stage. And then we looked at your performance indicators, your percent change in property value, your percent change in average value of commercial permits. You have all that. But what we wanted to talk about was your percent change or your number of change in jobs supplied by Port Orange businesses. We have the tools to show that. I can't go out today, I can't tell you the number is from today, but it's a snapshot in time within the last 3 months of what it looked like. And I could do data pages after pages after pages, but I'm going to keep it on a real simple, real level to kind of show you what's going on. This is Port Orange 10-year employment growth with average annual wage on top since 2000, basically from 2006, 2005 quarter 4 at the very left to 2017 quarter 4 on the far right. And then the bottom line is your employment. So 2008, that gray shaded area between 2008 and 2009, that's considered the recession. We all know about the recession 10 years ago. On the bottom page, you're right around just under 13,000 total employment in jobs in Port Orange. Just under 13,000 jobs in Port Orange available. And today, right now, you're over 17,000. 17,000, and I got the number written down here. Oh, it's right down here. 17,630 jobs in Port Orange. So you've grown your jobs by almost somewhere around 4,000 jobs in 10 years, which is a good growth. Your average annual wage has gone from right around between 35,000 to over 38,000, which has been you've increased, and we've seen that throughout so you've steadily grown, and you have some pretty from 2011. You see a huge growth between 2011 and 2013. So as you continue to grow, those numbers will go up, and we'll talk more about those as we go along. We're going to talk a little bit about the next couple slides. This is a cool slide. This is zip code 32127, which is the primary zip code of Port Orange. This is where your Port Orange residents work. Of those 17,600 jobs in Port Orange, 2,152 people that have those jobs live in Port Orange and work in Port Orange of the 17,000. Wow. So just a shade over 15% or so. My math's going quick. And then these other shaded areas are the other zip code areas where people work and go to. This is where your citizens are going to work. We can do this on the whole United States. There's in some cities, some people will live in Cleveland and commute in every week, and they show that. So this is kind of showing that where your citizens go to work. So the regional effect of jobs being placed in just in the county, as you can see, what effect that would have on you. You have, like I said, there's the workforce of about 23,000 people. It's a little over 23,000 people that live in Port Orange that have jobs. 2,000 of them stay. So 17,000 come into work. About 20,000 leave to go. So
knowing that's kind of a reminder that even when Team Volusia might not be bringing us directly to the city, when you're bringing something to the area, our residents benefit.
Absolutely, and that's really kind of what the story you have to tell us.
We still want you bringing things directly.
Absolutely,
to the city.
No, we get that absolutely. But what we have to tell people is, when it comes to a piece of property, companies aren't looking at most of the time not looking at what city it's located in. They want that piece of property. What can I get on that piece of property? and then we start going in, oh, well, now you're in Port Orange, and this is the and so a lot of times it's this regional, they want to be in Volusia County, or they want to be in Central Florida, and we're competing against Orange County and Flagler and Brevard. So, but you know, we can actually show you where your citizens all go, and really, like I said, I can shoot out information like what sectors they work in and those type, which is good information for us to give to site selectors of what strong sectors do you have, and we could do a whole probably meeting on that too. And this is the next slide. This is where the people who come to Port Orange to work live. So these are the counties they're coming from. So this is where you're drawing from for your jobs in Port Orange as well. So 2 cool slides I thought to show the effect of regionalism in economic development and where people work and where people come to work. So, you know, if everybody in Port Orange, you have 17,000 jobs. If everybody had a job that lived in Port Orange, you're still at 23,000 workers. So they'd still have to leave. And you know, you're talking every job from the minimum wage job clear up to the CEO. So you've got to, and of course, there's more minimum wage jobs than there are CEO jobs. So keep that in mind too. So there's a lot of people working in. These are all employment, full-time and part-time in these numbers as well. You want to talk about
Sure. Yeah.
business? All right.
So, as we mentioned before, our clients have a shorter timeline than ever, maybe 6 months to 18 months max. And one issue that we face here in this county, and this is a county graphic, is the vacancy rate of our industrial property. 1.8% vacancy right now. And you could argue the validity, of course, of data, but even if the data is wrong and you double the number, it's still an unbelievably low number. So we have an issue facing us in this particular county of not having enough product.
So you're saying 98.2% of the properties are occupied,
or
industrial
they have
properties.
a lease on them. You know, they may not have a tenant, but yes.
Are active.
They're active, that's correct. Which is why now we're seeing developers interested in spec product, finally.
On the industrial side.
On the industrial side. This is something we've been pushing for some time.
It's good because we got land in Eastport's business park they can look at.
There you go. So this is just a very interesting graphic, and you can see how we compare to the blue line, which is the national average. 6% is it's almost unheard of, you know, years ago. But now we're under 2. That's quite low.
So this would answer my question, I would imagine, that I was going to have is, why has Williamson area not evolved into a huge industrial parkway, if you will? Because you talk about quality of life, you talk about access to the interstate, that's ideal. And you've got 2 of them out there with Radon and U.S. Foods and Thompson Pump coming out, but they're local, just transitioning. What's been the hang up from more manufacturing not looking at that prime area?
Yeah, that's actually one of our last slides. We touch upon that, and it's really not an answer. It's more of a question, and we want to help solve that question, to be quite honest with you. There's a lot of factors to consider, which we'll get into here at the end.
Okay.
Office vacancy rates still under 5% in the county as well. Again, look at the United States average, well above, well, it's at about 10. And then we are quite low. So if we want to get office users, we have to put them somewhere. They're not going to build, or they don't want to build. This is an issue. And what we're seeing now are property owners, and what we have actually spoken to a number of your property owners about in this community is converting property that is formerly, let's say, retail into an office use, right? Something along those lines. It's a quick turn that would be shorter than building a new office product.
Yeah, I ran some numbers, and you saw a slide similar to this, I think, earlier in the year. I just really updated the numbers. This is Port Orange, which is we use a company called CoStar, which does aggregated reports for us, and they do choose different areas. This actually area is showing the top left is showing the South Daytona area vacancy rate, which is I can't get a report that just does each specific city in that one, but it's pretty well a good snapshot of the area. I would argue that Port Orange's numbers are actually probably lower, that you have less vacancies throughout Port Orange on a whole in all of those numbers. But even at retail, industrial office in the Port Orange, South Daytona, Edgewater, New Smyrna Beach area, you know, you're under 5%, 5.3%, and the vacancy rates are particularly in the industrial, is split in half in 6 months almost, as you can see. So the industrial property is going away quickly. The available industrial, not property, industrial buildings. These are buildings, not land. And then I do Port Orange specific in the lower left-hand corner. I basically ran a report on available land, 1 acre or greater, because we think it's, less than 1 acre is not a bang for your buck. On 1 acre, you can probably put 50,000 or 25, 30,000 square feet, depending on the property. 50,000. Dwight probably could speak more to that, but just depending on the configuration of the property. But you could put a fairly good sized one business property on there, or 2 smaller ones. We had 3 industrial zone sites. You have 23.2 acres available for sale that are listed right now publicly. So when you talk about the Williamson area, none of those properties are on that Williamson area. So there's nothing technically listed for sale or on the market publicly in that area. That's one of the issues that may be out there right now, because we don't get that. Nobody's telling us that. It may just be property that's either off market and being listed quietly. And we talk to a lot of real estate agents and commercial real estate. We know a lot about the properties that are available. Those don't come up in the conversations all the time, right? Correct? Okay. You have 1 fully entitled industrial site, which is near the Eastport Commerce Park. And you have your largest properties for sale are technically commercial properties and mixed use. Those are on there. A 16 acre, 15 acre, and 12.41 acre property. The rest of them, the 41 of the 40, the 3 were zone industrial. The other 37 are mostly commercial and mostly commercial retail, and some office. But you could do office and commercial retail the same based on knowing your zoning. As we look at buildings on the right side, right now there's 35 properties for lease, 1 industrial space, and it's a small space, like 5,200 square feet. You have 8 spaces, office, 23 retail, 2 specialty, 1 flex, all small. Office space, you get down to 5,000 square, the additional greater than 5,000, you have 1 space, and that's 11,000 square feet for sale. And then you get down further, there's, 10,000, still that 11,000 square feet. Now, of the retail spaces, you have a couple larger spaces that are considered retail that also could be light office or a larger office type things. A 60,000, I believe a 50,000, and a 20,000. I want to say somewhere around there. That actually we do give to prospects and talk with the property owner's permission and knowing your zoning laws. I know we work with Tim a lot to talk about if we put something somewhere, we show a property to a company, would the zoning laws allow it? We try not to show anything that violates your zoning laws or require some sort of big zoning change. We just think that's too much time involved in that. Companies aren't going to wait for a zoning change. And a lot of times you guys aren't going to be interested in going through that whole zoning change process for something small or something not, that just won't be worth it for either side. So we stay away from that.
So Tim was nice enough to send us a couple maps that I wanted to touch upon. Clearly there's a lot of residential growth taking shape around the city, which is outstanding. It creates more demand. But what we're not seeing is a whole lot of industrial development, of course. Here's the what's this called? The Western Industrial Zone. Yeah. So that's the official name. So in there you have a couple commercial uses. You have about 231 acres. So you figure maybe 231 acres, you cut that number in half for setbacks, environmental issues, water retention, et cetera, and then you divide it up amongst a handful of parcels. There's not a whole lot of job creation possibility there. There is some, no question about it, but given how much residential growth is happening, we're only going to see a couple thousand jobs maybe go there realistically if you had to do some sort of analysis on that. Residentially, I counted almost 3,200 new units are coming online right now, and there could be more. I don't know if that was the most up-to-date map or not, but that's quite a few numbers of people. So anyhow, just wanted to throw that out there as a situation that we find ourselves in. And there's another map that we have to illustrate the area that you spoke to earlier. And then the 2 industrial zones. So Eastport, I will touch upon Eastport real quick. We show Eastport, we talk about Eastport quite a bit. One of the issues we're finding with Eastport is it's a little bit further off the highway than what a lot of our larger clients want, frankly.
Yeah.
You know, and that's understandable. There's still highway land available, and that seems to be the desire of most clients. It doesn't mean it can't work for a lot of folks, and we certainly push that a lot. One manufacturer I'm going to show this site to later this week, but I just wanted to be up and front and honest about that with you. Okay, so next steps.
Yeah, as we talked about earlier, and I said we took your objectives and kind of what we've talked about today, you know, taking your objectives and putting them into that circle of what companies are looking for and how we answer those questions through your strategic planning and through your future planning, quite honestly, is to see, you know, if you go through those and kind of look at those objectively, and how do you stack up from a Port Orange standpoint trying to answer those questions? Because we answer those questions too. We work with staff. I know Chris does, I do myself quite a bit on trying to answer those questions from the Port Orange standpoint on specific projects and making sure we have it. But we also think as a council, you need to understand, it's important to understand what those factors are as well as you go forward in the next 2 to 5 years as you start looking down the road towards other development avenues. As you start to build out in those areas, you have some decisions to make, obviously. Do you concentrate on infill redevelopment, or is there opportunities for growth with annexation in other areas that could be done as well? It's important for us from a Team Volusia standpoint to work closely with you to all understand what that is and understand those opportunities that a sitting council would be in favor of on areas that either may not be annexed or have been discussed to be annexed that may go for industrial or commercial development in the future if that's a topic you want to discuss. So we can actually give them as the most up-to-date properties and planning that the city has. I did see also in there kind of towards the back in like an appendix you had, you talked about some annexation of properties for industrial, I believe on the west side of the city out. And we weren't really sure where that was, but we know there's some areas on the west side. We took a look at the map, and being the economic development nerds we are, we can usually see where stuff's being built and based on houses or industrial. So we kind of had an idea, and it'd be great to sit down sometime, at least from our standpoint, to talk with you or the staff to see what those plans are in the future and how we can help sell that and drive business that way. Because if we know that, we can start actively pursuing projects, as long as from your guys' side you're also pursuing the proper infrastructure, the proper zonings, to make sure it's a seamless process for these companies to look at and make it those Port Orange properties very viable for them in the future. These are your suggestions.
Well, as Matt said, our final suggestions are more overarching than they are, all inclusive. We have to talk quite a bit more to narrow down a larger list, but we hope to work in more unison to talk about developability of Williamson property and other properties throughout the city. We also saw in the strategic plan there a goal of developing an incentive program. We'd be happy to work with you on that. We've done that with other communities and can do that with you as well if you would like. Marketing activity, this is something we do all the time. We can't be your marketing department, but we can certainly help and advise and maybe partner when possible on marketing activities. And then, as we said before, the largest bang for your buck, the largest economic development activity is BRE, right? It's growing your BRE, growing your own companies.
Business retention expansion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Industry slang. And so there's a lot of businesses here. And so if we can help grow those companies, that's a great goal. So that is what we have. I brought some handouts. If you'd like, I could hand them over, and maybe you can read them later on. I didn't want to go over them, but they're for folks like yourself on economic development issues.
I definitely would like a copy of this.
Appreciate that.
slideshow.
The baseball analogy when it comes to business retention is baseball games are won with singles and doubles strung together, because you get a whole lot more of those than the 3-run home run.
Yeah.
Certainly we like the big home run that you guys bring us from time to time, but they are few and far between.
Every once in a while, but we get more singles than doubles.
That's the idea. That's the idea.
Any
Questions, comments? Chase, go ahead.
Good analogy. Get them on, get them over, get them in. It's a way to win. You answered a question about Williamson. The other question is regard to Ridgewood. What has been your biggest challenge in recruiting in that area, and what can we do as a council? I mean, I'm willing to look at all options, whether it's height requirements loosening. You know, if you can't go back, then you got to go up. You know, I'm willing to get out of the box to see everything that needs to be done. I'm curious as to what your conversations have been like, and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, Chris and I will jump in and out of these things. So we know when it comes to Ridgewood, US 1, I'm going to talk about a property that's not in Port Orange, but in South Daytona. There's a major in South Daytona. There's a property just north of the Port Orange line, I believe. That has 40,000 square feet available. The biggest concern has been distance to the I-95 and getting through traffic and getting trucks in there. It's a beautiful building. It's got space. It's got dock high space, but it's been vacant for a while because a lot of times that's been the concern, is getting from Ridgewood to 95. The time it takes, it can take, might take 5-10 minutes. It might take 25, just depending on the stoplights, the traffic, the size of the truck.
It's still rail accessible, I believe.
It is.
So you're looking at a very specific client when it comes to
that I don't know if we get very little ask for rail on that areas. So it's it's advertised as rail, but we get very few requests for rail anymore at all in any of our projects. I can't tell you maybe 1 or 2 projects we've had in the since I've been here for 4 years that's asked for any type of rail.
That's why it is what it is, and that's why Eastport is what it is.
So my answer to that question is when I've worked in corridors like that, and it's not an easy proposition. One, your goal is to build relationships with people that can change not one property but multiple properties. And 2, you need to lower their risk. However you can do it. It's all a game of risk. So if you can lower their risk, because they're taking a risk in going into a corridor that's less guaranteed.
Right. So you need more incentives.
You basically do, yeah.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you. Good, Bob?
I'm good. Gentlemen?
No, good. Thanks for coming tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mayor, thank you very much.
Good information.
Appreciate it.
When they say economic development is a team sport, that means we're working with a lot of regional partners to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
That brings us to city facility mowing discussion. I had the joy and pleasure of meeting your husband the other day.
You did?
Yeah.
Me too.
I don't know if I like him as much as you do, but
Yeah, I like him a lot.
that's a good thing.
Okay, so, see if I can close this one out. And I'm hoping mine is up here. It is. Right here. Thank you, ma'am. Well, while we're getting our technology up and operating properly, Lynn Stevens, Interim Public Works Director.
I counted. You don't have as many slides as they did.
I know, I tried to keep it, I tried to keep it
They had
to
32.
a few
You
numbers.
have about half that amount.
Yeah, I didn't want to give you too much.
We did a little preview.
So we're here today to give you an overview and provide various options on how we can look at our facility mowing for our city facilities. Again, the purpose is just to provide you the information. We're hoping to get some direction from council this evening to kind of guide us on where you would like us to go. I'm also going to give you a little bit of background and history of what the project is. We're going to analyze the different options that we've come up with. We've analyzed 3 different options for you for your consideration. We're going to provide you the summary of costs and then give you the conclusion. So, moving on, the first thing that I would like to bring to your attention is there are 3 separate areas when we talk about mowing within the city of Port Orange. We have the rights of way. That contract is the side of the roads They're the ones that are not maintained by city staff. The city staff does maintain some rights-of-way within our city. Currently, Yellowstone has been awarded the contract in April 2016, and we renewed it in April 2018 with no cost increase to that contract. It is currently set to expire in April 2019, and that contract is $533,076 per year. We have another contract that was one of the alternates on the original 2006.
Sorry, can you say the number again? How much?
$533,076 is
Just
that
for
contract.
that one section?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
When we went out for bid in 2016, we had a couple of alternatives. One of the alternatives was some stormwater ponds and palm tree trimming. So that contract was awarded in August 2017. It expires in 2019. Again, not all the stormwater ponds are covered under this, and not all tree trimming is covered under this. We have city staff that also do some stormwater pond mowing as well as trimming throughout the city. Currently, Yellowstone was awarded that contract. Again, it does expire in July 2019. The annual dollar value for that is $116,189, and that is split between general fund, drainage, and parks and recreation. Then we had the final mowing contract that was for city facilities, and this includes all of City Center, including the gym, the roads coming in, as well as the amphitheater, all the fire stations, police department, and numerous parks around the city. There are 36 sites that are covered under this portion, and that contract expired in April 2018. And the dollar value on that one prior to expiration was $337,846. So since April, city crews have been performing these mowing tasks of the 36 facilities. It comes to just under 100 acres of property that we're maintaining. Depending on the season, right now we're in the grow season, so we're mowing between 3 or 4 times per month. Sorry, a little typo on my slide there. 3 or 4 times a month, depending on which location it is. And that was all spelled out in the original contract. We're maintaining the same level of service that our previous contractor was maintaining. While we were doing this, it provided us a significant amount of detail over the last few months on how many hours and what manpower requirements it would take if the city opted to continue doing these tasks in-house. And what we did, and I'll get into how we came up with those numbers a little later. Again, it was real-time numbers that we collected, how many hours we spent physically mowing each facility. We averaged those out. We looked at how many people we used to accomplish the task. We looked at how many times per year those facilities needed to be serviced under the current guidelines, the current level of service. And what we came up with is between 8 and 10 employees daily is what we use to maintain the facilities currently. Again, it provided us all the detail. I would like to point out that while staff was performing these tasks, their other normal work assignments were not being performed. Those include irrigation repairs. So not that we really need it right now, but the irrigation system.
Got that covered, don't you?
Yeah. God help cover that one. So higher power than I am. So the irrigation system has not been repaired, so there are some broken sprinkler heads, some broken lines out there that we have not had the opportunity to get in and repair. Some of the tree trimming has been significantly reduced so that we can dedicate ourselves to maintaining these facilities. We also have some other in-house mowing obligations that are not being serviced as normal. So they're being serviced but not as regularly as we were doing prior. And we're also behind on some ditch cleaning and some maintenance in our drainage system because staff has been redirected in this area. So we did look at 3 alternatives, as we've discussed with council before. We looked at full-time city staff, creating a whole new mowing division and bringing all of this in-house. We looked at full-time supervision with part-time maintenance workers. So that was another alternative that we looked at. And then we were already out for bid for this service, so we brought that into the mix as well for comparison. So what we worked out when we crunched all the numbers since April 1st, we have been using an average of 320 hours a week. We are in the middle of grow season, has been raining a lot, that grass is really growing. So that 320 hours a week includes travel to and from the various job sites. Remember, there's 36 of them. It includes our lunch and our standard breaks that we give our employees on a regular day. This equates to 8 people, 8 hours a day, and then we would have supervision on top of that. So when I work out the numbers, this is what the numbers look like. We worked with the HR staff. They checked the Florida Public HR Association survey in 2017, and they found that the normal maintenance worker or laborer in the state of Florida had a median starting wage of $11.88 an hour, an actual starting rate of $13.51. Currently in our Public Works Department, our Public Works maintenance workers start at the rate of $11.48 an hour, and they currently range between $11.48 and $12.30 an hour. That's what our crews currently make in those positions. The supervisor and crew chief is consistent with what our work divisions look like. We have a supervisor, it's a working crew chief, as well as 8 full-time maintenance workers. This is for the grow season. Wintertime, we calculated that we could do 6 maintenance workers in the wintertime, or redirect those other 2 staff to other tasks. We base these rates on 40 hours a week. Currently, the city has 25 maintenance worker positions, and 23 of the 25 are filled. The 2 vacancies are in Public Works. Out of those 25 positions, 14 of those positions are allocated to Public Works. The other positions are in the Parks Department. The other 9 positions are in the Parks Department. 5 of those are part-time slots in the Parks Department. Each of our work divisions, again, has a crew chief and a supervisor, so I structured this division to be consistent with the rest of our work groups. And benefits. Let's talk about benefits. We based it on 40 hours a week, and we used a benefit package of 40%. When we looked at the numbers, the actual numbers from our workforce, excluding fire and police, the citywide average is about 38%. But due to the low hourly wage of the maintenance worker, there's a lot of fixed costs in those benefits, so that rate can actually go much higher. But we used 40% as a conservative estimate for benefits. So when we look at labor alone for full-time city staff, it comes to $352,643.20. We also looked at using part-time maintenance workers, using full-time supervisors with part-time maintenance workers. The number that was floated around was $15 an hour, so we looked at that. Again, the full-time folks would be the 40% benefits. The part-time maintenance workers, we based it on 29 hours a week, and we used the same 320 hours divided by 29 hours a week, gave us the number of people that we needed for a 29-hour work week. We calculated that we would need 11 part-time workers during the grow season, and at $15 an hour, that came to $248,820. And although they don't receive traditional benefits of a city worker, the city does have expenses associated with part-time workers, and it's calculated to be 9.5%. And that includes the city's obligation for taxes as well as workers' comp. So that comes to a total of $357,663.02 just for the labor.
Are we rated differently on workers' comp costs depending on the work they do, or do we have just have one umbrella cost?
I will defer to Jamie Miller.
I had a feeling.
our Administrative Services Director.
Yes, based on the job being performed, we are rated differently. So the estimate included here takes into consideration what our current maintenance workers tasked with majority
So
of
it's not
mowing
an
are rated as.
amalgamation, it's specific to the task.
Correct.
Which means that, thus the higher cost.
Yes.
Okay.
Outside and
Gotcha. Thank you.
So while we were looking at the part-time maintenance worker option, we wanted to bring to your attention that again, the crew chief and supervisor would still be full-time. We don't believe that we'd be able to hire part-time supervision, and I don't believe it would be in the best interest of the city to do that. The starting rate for a crew chief is $13.50 an hour. May make it difficult when he or she would be paid less than the people that he supervised, may create some issues for us. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, something that we're looking at as well. Another fact that I'd like to bring to your attention is during our research on our current positions within the city, again, excluding fire and police, there are currently 154 employees within our workforce that make less than $15 an hour. 33% of our employees are less than $15 an hour. So that may also pose some issues if we brought part-time folks in at $15 an hour. And again, hiring part-time people would also increase our difficulty in hiring the full-time over part-time people. I understand from the Parks Department management that they also have issues getting part-time people to come to work. And usually theirs are at night, not during the day, and we're going to be required, so they could use it as a second job. We're going to be looking at this task as a daytime obligation.
Probably with an early morning start, too.
Yes, sir. So the next thing that we wanted to look at, whether we go with the part-time maintenance workers or full-time maintenance workers, is, of course, some other considerations that we have to look at. They include the initial equipment purchase, equipment operating costs, other services that are included in the contracts, as well as how do we maintain the equipment? Do we do that in-house or do we contract that out? So we're going to look at each one of those, take just a minute for each one of those because we did include those in our cost estimates. We looked at the equipment that we would need for mowing in-house. This is the list that staff came up with. I kind of whittled it down just a little bit, but it came to a capital cost of $160,944. We did obtain this pricing not by calling around getting pricing. We simply used the state contract just to give us a general idea of what it would take to actually purchase this equipment.
Is that the same equipment list that's required in the bids?
You know, when we bid, we asked them for their equipment list, but my mistake was not to ask specifically for our project.
So will all the future bids require that same exact equipment?
I will say we will request that they provide us what equipment they'll provide for our bid, what equipment they plan to use on our project. Whereas the companies, we asked them for a list of their equipment, they provided us everything that they own,
Okay.
corporate-wide. Not really what I was looking for. I should have been a little bit more specific in that specification. I was looking for exactly what you're talking about. What equipment do they plan to dedicate to our project?
Yeah, not what they say they own, but what do they actually use?
Exactly.
Because that's not it.
No, we did not get that from them.
Okay.
So, no, I
So
do
that's
not
not-
have that
that's not a realistic
information.
apples
But that's
and
us
oranges.
learning what to ask for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What are they bringing to us?
Okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
This is equipment that came from staff.
Gotcha.
And this is not equipment that we currently have. So the equipment that staff is currently using has been redirected from their normal workday. So when they resume their normal work days, the equipment is going to go back with them to their normal work duties. So that equipment would not be available to a new crew. So we would need to buy equipment.
Sure.
And granted, we probably could whittle this down, this equipment list, but we wanted to make sure that we had spare equipment so if something was down, the entire mowing division did not stop.
And you're starting worst case and then gain efficiencies from there.
Yes, and we can always look at that list a little closer. It was not included in our annual cost for operating a mow division, just given to you as startup costs.
Gotcha.
Then we also looked at the hourly cost for operating the equipment. And we looked at how many hours we used a mower, a trimmer, an edger, and a blower. We looked at industry standard, what are the costs for the different supplies, maintenance, and repair parts. What is the fuel and oil cost for each piece of equipment? We looked at life cycle replacement, and we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes.
Can you touch on those, the numbers you're just talking about right now? Did you get that from the manufacturers?
Well,
Of the
for
equipment?
that one, I'm going to turn that over to Ronnie Buttram. He is our Assistant Public Works Director, and he was very helpful at assisting me in getting some of
You
that
know, it's
information.
about time she dragged you out here for one of these. We've been hearing so much.
I've been trying to lay pretty low. Actually, some of these costs came from the manufacturers, looked them up on the internet. Some came from calling around, just getting some ideas from people. So it was an average cost on that.
Okay.
So the fuel cost was based on what the manufacturer's burn rate was. Most of them were hand tools are half a gallon an hour, and those are that's a 2-cycle oil. The mower was only 4-cycle.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. So these are the costs that we came up with. We also looked at the life cycle replacement costs. For the trimmer, edger, and blowers, we figured a two-year replacement. And for the mowers, we figured a 5-year replacement. You'll also notice in our capital cost for equipment, it included some vehicles. And for the vehicles, we used the FEMA rates. So again, we used our real-time hours. How many hours were we on the job site? We calculated the equipment expenses. Again, life cycle is included here for your information. And then we used $27.95, which is the FEMA-based rate for a vehicle with a trailer. And we figured a 10-year life cycle rate for that equipment. We estimated the annual cost to be $79,408.28, and it does not include other items such as safety equipment, hand tools, uniforms and training for staff. Another part of the contract was the other services, which included mulching, fertilizing, pest control, and some other palm trimming outside of the other contract for palm trimming. So again, this was included in the outside bids, not part of work that the city staff is currently performing. So what we did is we took the average bid price from the bids that we received, because those are priced out separately, and we had an average bid price of $58,715. We think we could do a little bit better than that, but I don't think it's going to be significantly lower, because we would have to contract out the pest control and the fertilizing aspect.
These are kind of, guys, tell me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion, this is kind of where the extemporaneous stuff that we kind of get most of the complaints about. I mean, cutting grass is cutting grass, but when people always notice when you get brown spots, people always notice the insects, all the things that, to me, this might not be the biggest cost, but I think it's just as important as anything that we do. Those are when the palms aren't taken care of on Nova, we hear that. I mean, those are very, very visible things. So just point out,
Dressing.
it's not just, well, you can call it window dressing all you want, but the window dressing is what people see.
Sure.
So the next item that we took a look at was maintaining the equipment. We're spending a considerable amount of capital money. We want to make sure that we maintain that equipment properly. And so we looked at how could we accomplish that task best, and we looked at our current fleet maintenance staff, and certainly they're pushed to their limits right now, and putting additional workload on them was not a viable option, we did not believe. So we looked at a full-time maintenance mechanic addition to the fleet division and charging half of that to the mow crew. because we think that they would take about 20 hours a week, especially as the equipment ages, would take about 20 hours a week to maintain and repair the equipment to keep us mobile. And again, that was based on a full-time maintenance mechanic. The hourly rate of $14.07 is the starting salary for a maintenance mechanic for our city. We use the same 40% benefit package as a full-time employee would get, and we just used it as 20 hours instead of 40 hours. So the third option we had was the contract.
Lynn?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry, before we move on with that.
Yes, sir.
I haven't seen, maybe I'm missing it. Are you gonna need any addition to, vehicular fleets?
It is in our list of operating equipment. If you look here, it has 3
I see.
one-ton crew cabs
I see.
and 2 enclosed trailers.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Okay.
You're not parking one of those in your driveway, Chase.
I'll put it on the side of the yard.
So again, our third option was to continue contracting facility mowing. We did revise the specs before we went back out for bid in May of this year. It did include all equipment and personnel for that. So the contractor was responsible to do all the mulching. They were also responsible for pest control, weeding, trimming, fertilizer. After going out for bid for 30 days, we received 4 bids. These are the prices from the different vendors. I do wish to point out that we have not begun our thorough evaluation of the bids, so only the bid price is reflected here. We have not done any of the reference checks. We haven't vetted these vendors at all.
Lynn, what do you attribute between the high and the low of just 4 companies? We're at what, a $250,000 difference?
Mm-hmm.
What do you attribute that to?
Again, I have not fully reviewed those. I haven't thoroughly reviewed those. I didn't want to have an unbiased thought in my head when I was doing the evaluation for in-house.
Okay.
So I did not take the time to evaluate the bids, so all I've provided are the numbers. The only thing we did do is we asked purchasing to reach out to the 2 lowest bidders and ask them what their staffing plan was for our project. And their staffing plan we'll talk about here in a couple minutes when we do the final comparison. But we were right in the ballpark. Again, I didn't want to give myself an unbiased view or staff an unbiased view of what we were evaluating. I wanted to be fair and impartial.
Gotcha.
And just look at the information that we need. So when you put all the costs together, when you look at full-time, it comes to $511,252.40. Using part-time maintenance workers with full-time supervision comes to $516,272. And then we have our 4 outside contract bids. So that just provides the blank numbers of how we came up with our numbers and what numbers that we've come up with to accomplish these tasks. We've run the part-time maintenance workers at $11.48. It drops the number a little bit, but nowhere near comparable to the 2 low bids. We looked at using remedy staffers instead of the part-time workers. Again, it did not provide significant savings in those areas either.
Lynn, this does not include us having to buy equipment, right?
That's correct, sir. It does have the capital cost recovery, so when you buy a piece of equipment, the departments pay every year
The
based on the
amortization.
life of the equipment.
Is that in here?
It is, yes, sir. Under the daily operating, it is included in that figure. But again, you're correct, that capital upfront cost, that startup cost is not included.
I'm a
Which is
little-
why we gotta get this right from the get-go.
I'm a little confused, Lynn, because you gave
Sure.
3 different numbers early on. 533,000, 116, 333,000. That comes out to 987,000. Now I'm seeing, these lower costs. Are we looking at a specific contract right now you're talking about?
We are. We're looking at the $333,000 contract,
Okay.
and that one
Right.
has expired.
Okay.
So that's what we're comparing to.
I thought so. I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
I also discovered that this service for these facilities only, the facility mowing, has been contracted out. The records that I could find go back to 1996. And for that long, these facilities have been contracted. I don't know at what time they at what point they were changed from city staff mowing to contract mowing. The city did have mowers for some of the other services, some of the other areas, but those areas were not included in this evaluation. We're simply looking at the contract that expired for $333,000.
Lynn, so, were you done?
I'm done.
So, on this slide here, 511,000
Yes, sir.
annual dollars. How many total manpower hours for the year does that give us?
Ooh, I'd have to get my little
that.
calculator out. It'd be 320 plus 80, so 400 hours a week, 52 weeks.
20,000.
So 20,000 man
20,000
hours?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so for these others, how many man hours do we get for that cost total
The
service?
part-time maintenance workers were 29 hours, and there was 11 of them, so that's my math isn't working right in my
No, I'm
head
sorry.
right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
319.
Let me clarify. So
Sure.
for 511,000, we get roughly 19 to 20,000 total man hours
Yeah.
of service.
You get total hours, and
Oh,
then you
wow.
have to deduct out of that the vacation
Correct.
time, sick leave.
Right. So the last company that had this particular contract that we're talking about,
Right.
on average, was using 3 to 4 people to service the accounts. So how many hours were we getting total from them for the year?
That I don't have. I can find that information out from our inspector.
It's less than 4,000. So
Could be.
I think that's a point
didn't
for
look
council
at
to kind
that.
of to understand that we're talking about a contract that was 36 services a year, but not all areas got 36.
Between 39, some are 39, some are 36, some are 32.
Right.
And we use those same numbers in our calculations.
Okay. But the reality of it is that that company wasn't using 8 people, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. And so we're spending X dollars and we're getting a total manpower service number of whatever it may be. But let's just say for sake of argument, it's 5,000 or 6,000. It's not 20,000.
Right.
Okay.
Understood. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that mean
Go ahead.
that the vendor was more productive? I mean, what would you deduce from that if we were, if they were giving us 6,000 or 7,000 hours,
This
however
is
many?
one job that they do out of, this would be our only job.
Yeah.
This is one job out of how many in which they're able to use the same equipment, some of the same manpower and the
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. And then,
So there are efficient, law of large number efficiencies that they
yeah.
get.
And then there's no calculation in here for these current city staff are being pulled off other jobs, so those aren't getting done. So now we have to look at that, and okay. All right.
Again, these were purely unbiased numbers.
Yeah.
We did not take into account the bids. That's why I purposely did not evaluate those bids. I wanted to be able to provide a purely unbiased view of exactly what we were doing out there.
And I think that's the way to approach it. But I also think from the council's perspective, because I know you've mentioned it several times, that while you're currently having to use current employees pulled from other things, that wouldn't be the plan moving forward. If we went to something like this, we're talking about a whole nother division. Those employees go back to doing what they're supposed to be doing,
Exactly.
which is not a cost calculated into this.
That's
So,
correct.
Okay.
And then we're not even talking about span of control issues either.
Exactly.
Once
Exactly.
you're very close to being done, so once you power through that, and then
Okay.
We'll pepper you with 100 questions.
All right. All right. Hopefully I can answer them all for you. Some advantages of in-house facility mowing, of course, is the ability to utilize staff in other locations during both the slow season and if it's raining, because there are certain tasks that we do, even especially when it's raining, such as storm drains. So there would be some overlap of personnel on that side. Of course, there's pride, ownership, and that control of the workload and what type of job and scope creep, if you will, as opposed to a contract that is very limited. The other disadvantages that we do need to talk about is what do we do when we get a week worth of rain? I mean, we've seen our contractors out there working on Saturday and Sunday. We don't have the ability to send our staff home because it's raining today and we don't have enough work for all of them to do. We don't have that flexibility. We're still going to pay for that. So we're faced with how do we schedule that additional workload and get that done before the next mow cycle, or do we plan on overtime for that? And I did not use any of that in my calculation, but it was something that I wanted to bring to your attention.
That's a wild variable. That's such a wild variable.
By the way, it's an absolutely important variable. More cities have, I did some work for the International Association of Chiefs of Police with cities on financial problems, and the largest problem they had was out of control overtime. And one of their worst departments was not the police, surprisingly. It was usually Public Works, for the very same reason you're talking about.
Once you spend it, you cannot get it back.
Yeah. But it's always had it.
So the next thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is our turnover rate in this position. In Public Works, we have a 28% turnover rate for maintenance workers right now. Citywide, we have a 21% turnover rate. So because these positions are the starting level position in our city, we have a higher turnover rate. Again, the turnover rate are folks actually leaving the city. They do not include promotions and transfers to other departments. And a lot of times that's what this position is. It's the first step in an employee's career, and they tend to move from one location to the other, and they transfer out. So the time to hire the average employee is 66 days. It takes us 66 days to get through that hiring process.
That's a lot of grass
Just so
growth
you
in the
know.
meantime.
And the cost of that 66 days and all the manpower that goes into hiring employees is not included in the cost. Interesting fact, the average tenure for this position is less than 1 year. So we have employees that generally stay in this position less than 1 year. We do have some that have been in this position for a while, but they're not that frequent. And then we did not include the risk management expenses, but that is something that we need to consider, especially if we're mowing and a rock hits a vehicle, whether it's parked or whether it's driving by. That is a risk that we have to look at. And risk management that would be workers' comp, I guess.
Do we incur any of that risk now?
We do not. The contractor has all of that risk.
So if that happens in from one of the contractors' mower, the city is completely oblivious to any risk?
That is my understanding. That is the contractor's obligation. Their claim is with them. It's also
crack a window or whatever, then they're on the hook for the couple $100
Yes,
or what. Okay.
Well, you're hopefully hiring their expertise.
Yeah.
You're hopefully hiring they know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
And then
when you
we-
hire them, you're passing that along.
But yeah, you know, rocks get dropped in there, they can get shot. I mean, you know, anything can happen. Okay.
Well, don't be giving people ideas.
Anything can.
So in conclusion, we've presented you 3 options that we see, and that would either be full-time city staff, a combination of full-time supervision with part-time city staff, or contract the vendors back out. In answer to one of your potential questions, each one of the maintenance workers with benefits is about a little over $33,000 per year. So even if you drop to 6 people, you would drop about $66,000, $67,000 off of that annual cost. Certainly a far cry from the $200,000.
Okay. Drew, why don't you lead us off?
Did the previous vendor rebid?
No.
They did not bid. So, but roughly it was 337, 800 and change is what was spent on these facilities with the previous vendors.
That was the previous contract price, yes, sir.
Okay, so at least 2 of our vendors are actually less than what we were paying before.
Yes, sir, and we have budgeted $369,000, not knowing what was going to happen with a new contract.
Okay.
When we were starting preparation of the budget, we budgeted $369,000.
Yeah, I saw that in there. Okay. And the other 2 things that you gave, the other 2 figures were for the rights of way, stormwater, and some of the tree trimming and stuff. So that contract is still current through 19.
That's correct. There's 2 contracts there. They're both.
Yeah.
One goes until April of 2019. We still have the option to renew that for 1 more year.
Okay.
And then the other contract expires in July 2019. And I believe that has 2 one-year renewal options the city could consider.
Okay.
What else you got?
I got a question because I got a phone call just the other day.
US 1?
No,
Oh.
no, about is one of the facilities that isn't getting serviced as often, at the end of Sweetwater Road, there's a pond, but if you drive down Sweetwater behind the gaps and those Goodyear, there's
Yep.
a pond.
Yep.
Is that one of the one that isn't being maintained as often because,
That could be. I'll double check that.
okay.
I'll
'Cause
double check
The
that
gentleman
one.
seemed concerned. He said, you know, either city crews or somebody was mowing it and it hasn't been mowed in a while. So I drove out there and it was kind of high and the grass is, you know, there's a fence back there that runs along the sidewalk and none of, I mean, it all looked pretty bad.
I do believe that sidewalk is the HOA's. But
Okay,
the
yeah.
pond, I'll have to check on the pond.
Okay, yeah, because there's a pond back there on the other side of the fence, and then like there's a 4-foot or 5-foot sidewalk. It looked like pretty much the length of that. That's on the actually on the inside of the fence from where I could see at the end of Sweetwater. So it was just funny that we're discussing this tonight, and I get a call the other day about this. Okay,
I'll check on that.
Okay.
I'll find out.
okay. Yeah, and if it's not it, then whoever was mowing it is not doing it because it
We'll get on.
definitely is in need of service for sure.
Lynn, before I kind of get into my comments and most of my questions, can you kind of go back to your equipment daily operating expense slide?
Sure.
And we didn't get we didn't get this presentation till almost 3 o'clock today, but
Sorry about that.
it's okay. But so I haven't had a chance to really kind of go through and try to.
Okay.
But the one that jumped out is you've got this cost in here about cost per hour for vehicles / trailers, $27.95 an hour based on FEMA rates.
All right.
Explain that to me because that seems like that cost for vehicle exceeds more than double the cost of replacing brand new. I don't understand how that could be.
When we use, when we ask for reimbursement through FEMA, and when we do our 214s and we write down which equipment that we used when we're looking for FEMA reimbursement, they have a rate that they use for certain 1-ton crew cab vehicles and enclosed trailers. Those are the numbers that Ronnie picked up was off of the FEMA list. It includes insurance, it includes all the maintenance, it includes the replacement costs.
Insurance.
But realistically, like, so based on that number, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, we really do not anticipate it costing us $1,100 a week to have a pickup truck and a lawn trailer.
We actually did not calculate it based on 11 hours. We tried to reduce that number. When we first ran our numbers, we did. And then reevaluating our numbers, we said, well, the truck doesn't run the whole time. They're mowing.
Yeah, so that's not really
So
realistic.
so we reduced it to, I think, about an hour a day. Is that what it was, an hour?
Okay, so 27.
That makes sense.
Half hour. We reduced it to a half hour of usage per day.
Gotcha. I was like, wow, that's almost
Yeah.
$1,200 a week for a truck to sit. Okay.
And we looked at the same thing when Ronnie and I looked at the numbers. We said, well, again, it doesn't operate 8 hours a day, so we reduced that time frame.
All right, so couple of comments and concerns. You know,
Sure.
this is something that I've been asking Jake to take a really good look at for probably over a year now. My concerns are, what are we getting for what we're paying for, and are we getting the level of service that the council for years has sat up here asking for? In my opinion, we are not. So that's why I've been asking for so long for this, to look at this. I think the problem a little bit with the way that this is being presented to us tonight is we're looking at a slice of the service as opposed to the entire service, which is very difficult for us to do a good comparison because we don't have another client. So it's not like when our crews get done doing the fire stations and the police department, they go off and do another city. Whereas the private sector, they've got other clients, so understandably so. And so, whereas, you know, they come in, they service whatever they need to do for us as quickly as efficiently as possible, and then they move on, and we pay for that rate. Now we're trying to figure out how do we compare that to what did we pay versus what would we have from an investment standpoint if we did this in-house, which is why I was kind of pointing out that you know, based on just those numbers, which, Lynn, I do gotta say, I would find it very, very hard to believe that anybody in the private sector, I don't care how good or how poor they are, do a job with 4 people that it would take us 8 people to do the same job. So maybe I'm just going to assume that's just something that has to get worked out in time. But anyway, I think that what we see is an investment. The city's going to pay out the dollars. The taxpayer pays out the dollars, whether we pay that to the private sector or we keep that in-house. And what are we getting in return for that? So as I've mentioned with you and the city manager, is if I can pay X dollars out and get 20,000 man hours, which I can also use to help supplement the drainage stuff, you know, the other public works needs in the slow grow seasons. I mean, there conceivably in February you won't start a lawnmower, right? So that's a long time, and you may not start it in January either. So you know, there's a lot of hours there from an investment perspective that I'm very curious to see how could we where else can we utilize those man hours, and how does that look holistically? Because I think that's the perspective that we need to look at when it comes to this. Some of my other concerns are ownership and pride. That's something that we've talked about several times. Would city employees take a little bit more ownership and pride in the work product and produce a better product? Based on what I've seen from our city employees in the past, the answer is yes. I think they would. I think they would. You noted some hiring challenges. I got you. I don't disagree with some of those things that I think you're putting out there. In some of these positions, I think it's a product of the position themselves, whether they're private sector or government sector. I think some of that is going to be equally as challenging. You note some pay issues and things like that. I agree. I think there are some challenges there, and one of the things we see in the city, and I've seen from both sides now, is it's very, very difficult to compare the apples and oranges to every position in the city. But that's something that at some point each individual employee has to say, okay, this is what I want to do for a job or a career, and this is what I'm willing to do it for or not. And either the hourly rate is more important than the benefit, or the benefit vice versa, or whatever those different variables are. And I get that that's an individual decision. So I know that would be some challenge, but I do think that the ownership and the pride aspect of it, I believe, could yield a better product. I also believe that the supervisory portion of it can yield a better product. If we send a city crew out to do a job, and 2 or 3 hours into that job, you realize this isn't going the way I want, you can make that change right now, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen with contractors. That just doesn't happen. Now I've got to call somebody, I got to take pictures, I got to send emails, I got to go check on something, and then we'll hit it next week, or we hit it next month, or we do whatever. And that's not unique, by the way, to landscape maintenance contracts. That seems to be the run-of-the-mill for any private sector stuff that we deal with on a regular basis. Some of the other things you noted on here is about overtime and what do you do with storm conditions. Well, what do we do with that now? We have things every day in the city that we have to deal with, that inclement weather throws a curveball. But it seems to me like there's still something that can be done, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's taking the crew in and maintaining equipment, or clearing ditch lines and storm drains. And like, I get complaints last week about, it's raining every afternoon, yet nobody is clearing storm drains. Well, if I got a lawn crew who can't cut grass today because it's pouring rain, can they go and clear storm drains? Can they do those other types of things where they can be utilized? There always seems to be something in the city that needs to be done, that can be done regardless of the weather conditions. So I think that that's something to give some further thought to as well. And the big one that I really think needs really good consideration is, how else could we utilize staff in these slow growth seasons? When you look at all these contracts, I think we paid almost $1 million, not counting, you've got a full-time employee that monitors the contractors, right?
Yes. And Moat contracts are not the only thing she monitors and maintains.
Okay.
I mean, she does a lot of other things as far as inspection for public works for us.
Okay. Fair enough. But is this a large part of what she's doing or not?
Currently, it is a large part of what she's doing.
All right.
The facility mowing is one portion, but she also maintains the other 2 contracts. She also assists the solid waste manager. She also does a lot of the research on rights of way.
Right.
You know, we just talked about Sweetwater Pond, so the first thing we're going to do is say city pond, non-city pond, city sidewalk, non-city sidewalk.
Yeah.
Where do we stop? So there's a lot of research that goes into some of that, and we utilize her a great deal for that.
You know what, you just brought something else to my attention, or made me think about it. One of the other challenges that we always seem to have is the interpretation of the contract. We award a contract, we hire a service provider, and then that's not really what we meant, or that's not really what we do, but that's not. And then we have to go to legal, and legal says, well, we got to change the contract next time, or not change the contract. That doesn't happen if it's a city service. It's no, you will spray those crack weeds. Yes, you will remove that tree branch from the sidewalk, throw it in the back of your truck, and take it wherever. Or you will do those things. I mean, those are valuable things to me because of the control aspect that we get. Thus, again, a better product. I was looking for in here where we were. Point being is that with all those contracts for almost $1 million a year, none of them are 40-hour a week, 52 weeks a year services. So they are all partial service things. And kind of, I'm wrapping this up, Mayor, kind of going back to what I was talking about. My idea with talking to the city manager would not be to look at this thing as a slice. My idea would be to look at this for taking over all landscape maintenance services. Either we bring them all inside, or we don't, or we keep them all outside. I don't, because there's value in that, I think, not doing it that way, because you've got the equipment, you've got you start to develop the routine, and you get more efficient, and you get more experience at doing that. And I like the idea of using it as a stepping stone. I think it could be done correctly. I think it could be of great benefit to you, because I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't want to carry a string trimmer or a backpack blower for 20 years of my life. And not most of these people want to. And so there's some benefit there to saying, okay, listen, you know, we hire you on, we bring you in, and we're going to assign you this crew, and you do good for 12, 18 months. This is the hiring pool we're using for these other jobs that maybe are more attractive to you, or that you want to compete for. And now you've got a good look at folks to be able to say, that person's a really hard worker. They're worth moving in the organization or not. So. But I get that there's challenges, and I appreciate your presentation tonight. I obviously want to take a little bit more time to look through some of the numbers and the data that was given to us this afternoon, and kind of kick those around a little bit. But I appreciate it.
Sure.
There's absolutely no way we can make a decision on all this tonight. Anyway, we've got a lot to chew on, and this is certainly one of those that spurs 10 questions after we're done.
Sure.
It's Bob.
Yeah, I looked. Nice job.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you did.
Staff.
You really put a lot of thought into it, and I appreciate that. By the way, this is the eternal question. Pretty much, I think, been resolved, at least in most managers' minds. Going out for bids for specialty assignments seems almost everywhere in the country to be the most efficient way of getting city services, whether it be mowing, whether it be tree trimming, or the like. Pride in work, you would think, but the problem is at that level, at those pay schedules, with the high turnover, it just doesn't seem to come. That just seems come later. And I can honestly tell you, over the years working here in Port Orange, when it was done inside completely, similar problems. We didn't see a better quality product. Now, we also didn't, to be fair to Scott, have a council that was really serious about having quality work done. This is a bad time to bring things inside because of the hiring situation. We're having trouble enough filling our current positions without a major hiring spree, especially in low-paying jobs that, you know, there's tremendous competition for. Bad year in another way. Every time I look around, I'm seeing another $250,000 to $500,000 in needs appearing. And this clearly is going to be fiscally difficult for us to deal with. Government is just not good at a lot of product work. And I've never fully understood why. I just experientially understand it. It is very difficult, and it's probably because exactly we ask multitasking. We can't hone in with that specificity that efficiency demands. So I am not certain that transferring it inside is going to improve the quality of the work or the quantity of the work. But what I am sure it's going to increase the cost of the work. And right now, I would recommend taking the bids. I certainly would be willing, because I'm always open, if Scott and the city manager want to continue to look at the overall, what they can do. But I think for the near term, for the next year or two, as we deal with the several issues that are before council, all of which have heavy financial ramifications, that we go with tried and true, perhaps not as cool, and perhaps not as true as we'd like it to be, and do with the bid. You have a Public Works Department that I can see is improving. I don't want to toss them for another 50-yard loss by asking them the yeoman's job of setting up a new unit, and all the hiring and the tremendous managerial flux that's going to put everyone in. So I would suggest what we're doing with the contracts has been working, not as well as we'd like. And in a marketplace that we're currently in, nothing's going to work as well as we would like, because it is a very competitive marketplace. And it's going to be competitive whether we employ or whether outside people employ. It's just difficult. So I would urge us to save the money, go forward, and continue to do experimentation, because Scott's right. We do need to constantly look at options and alternatives, never become calcified. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Chase?
You know, for me, the numbers tell the story. It's a no-brainer. If I say I can do a job for $600,000, someone comes to me and says I can do it for half that, all right, I'm going to listen to you. Even though, you know, Scott brings up terrific points, it always makes me think in that angle, and I'm always willing to look at that. The fact is, in this situation, we're talking about mowing. You know, it can't be any simpler than this. Not easy, it's hard work, but it's simple. It's landscaping. And you know, someone says they can do the job with 4 or 5 people that are probably paid a lot more than the 8 people that are paid that are paid from the city to do it. I got to believe that the pride in making 15 an hour or so is worth something as compared to, you know, making $11.50 an hour. So I don't consider that as heavy as a factor. Frankly, I haven't had enough complaint from myself or residents, at least to me personally, you know, to pay such an exponentially higher cost on something as simple as this. However, you know, one big thing for me is case management. You know, Scott brought up excellent point on the contracts. You know, that was one of my comments a while back when we first had this discussion regarding holding people accountable to do their jobs. In making that contract black and white, as clear as day. If you're not doing this and you're not doing your job, we'll find somebody else. That is an area that I think we need to improve on, and I'd like to see people held to the fire on doing the job that we're asking them to do. Because at any point, and we can see that we are competitive with the private sector. If we have to bring it inside, I'm willing to, if it means to get the job done. Because I don't want to put a poor quality out. But I do want to hold people accountable to do their job. They say they can do it. I want it done. I want it done well. But at this point, I'm not interested in bringing it in-house. But I am interested in holding people accountable. If we're paying them a large sum of money to do this, I want it done.
Well, I think what you've got is clear as mud from us as far as direction. And I do agree. I agree with Drew, I agree with Scott, I agree with Bob, and I agree with Chase. And you know how much that drives me nuts, because none of what they said was the same. But I will say this, Alan, I would like to direct you to have Jake put this on an agenda, whether it be a part of a budget workshop or part of a council meeting, so that we can make a final decision about giving staff direction on what we want to do. I know which way I'm leaning, and I'm leaning towards the dollars, but I agree. I want to see, I don't want to give away all your functionality, but when we do bring this back for discussion, I am going to ask you for your recommendation as well. So be prepared for that.
Yes, sir.
I would also urge, and I think we all would, can we do it really quickly? Because
well, I think they need us to do it rather quickly.
I'm, you know, if you have to call a special meeting, I'm available, because I think it's important to get your staff back to cleaning the ditches. If I get any more calls from my residents about dirty ditches, I think I'll go crazy.
We might
You and
even,
me both.
Is there something we can tag something on with a workshop? Because I don't think we have a regular meeting till mid-July. Alan?
Yeah, we can probably put it in a workshop. One of the questions I had based on the information the council's kind of debated tonight was for Lynn, with Councilman Vice Mayor Stiltner's question is, if you were to expand your research to the other areas of mowing that we do, how easy would that be for you to do? Or is the type of mowing in the areas so different that you'd literally have to go through this process again with each one? Or could you come up with some rough numbers?
I'll have to talk with staff.
Okay.
Because we haven't done the other tasks in so long.
Right.
It's going to be difficult for me and staff to truly evaluate what it's going to take our staff to do. The other thing I would like to bring to your attention is, even though I have 8 full-time maintenance workers, a crew chief and a supervisor, when we asked the 2 lowest bidders for their staffing requirements, one was 6 to 8 and the other was 8 to 10 plus management. So I felt that we were right in the ballpark, especially considering the fact that it's 66 days to replace a person. We're going to lose at least 2 a year, whether it's promotions or it's just work they don't want to do, especially in the summertime. Yep. And so we're going to lose another 4 months of people.
It's all great.
So those 8 people, and then you have vacations, and you have sick leave, and you have all the other things that come into that equation. So even though we say we're going to have 8 people on payroll, at any given time we'll be lucky to have 6 or 7 workers out there in the field. So I did just want to clarify that for you.
That's a story from a lot of different department heads.
Yeah, and to that point, Lynn, again, the last contractor had it since what, 1996?
I don't know if that contractor had it. I know the last contractor had it from 2016.
The last contractor had it for a long time and was using 4 people.
I didn't know how long they had or how many people they used.
Right.
You're
my point
correct.
is that as a contractor, I could bid the contract tomorrow and tell you I'm going to use 12. I could tell you I'm going to use 20.
Sure.
Because maybe I'm getting it all done in one day.
Sure.
So again, that's what we find out with every one of these contracts. Well, how many people you got on your staff? How many are you going to use? I'm going to use 12. Why do I only see 6? why do I only see 5?
Understood.
So I get some of that too.
Regardless of they still would have to follow the contract, and if they can't, mow Dunlawton or the fire stations 40 times a year, then they're not meeting their obligations. So that would ultimately come back to them, would it not? I mean, if we were holding them to a T to the contract, then.
So we'll go back and we'll see what we can do about researching with Christine, who's doing the inspections, and she's only been doing the inspections since April of 2017. So she's been monitoring those contracts and keeping them on better task.
And there is a
And-
difference between mowing facilities versus mowing roads and mowing retention areas. There are differences.
Sure.
So we can try to see what we can do to expound upon it as much as we can in the short time frame available. I know that, staff is antsy, of course, coming with the budget process, as you guys know. We want to get direction from you as soon as possible to know how to incorporate this in the budget one way or the other. So we'll bring it back at the next available opportunity and give you a chance to ruminate on the numbers. If you have any individual questions for us, please let us know in the meantime. We'll try to get you that information.
Just to let you know, if there's a need to call a special meeting, 2 of us are away next week, so I need to be able to do that by Friday of this week for the following week.
How's tomorrow? Is tomorrow there?
I'm there.
I got 2 meetings tomorrow.
Okay.
After 3.
Okay.
No notice.
Anybody else like to speak to this?
I would like to thank staff for all their work that they did
did a
towards
wonderful
this
job.
presentation.
Very good.
I could never have provided you the information without the help of HR, the finance department, and all the public works staff. They've really done a great job for
Good
us.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent.
With that, everybody have a pleasant evening. Let's do it again tomorrow.
How about tomorrow?